We begin the scenic route on the road to WrestleMania, filled with some roadblocks, some awkward U-turns, and a few surprises that'll no doubt keep us talking all the way there. This is WWE Elimination Chamber 2021 Graded. On the kickoff show, we have a fatal four-way match, the winner replacing an injured Keith Lee in the US title match later on in the night. Mustapha Ali versus John Morrison versus Ricochet versus Elias. Ricky goes for a dive early on, Ali stops him, and we get a sort of four-way confuddled brawl here. Didn't seem to flow very well, parts of this match. Had a great moment where we see Ricky, Elias, and John Morrison going for reverse DDTs on one another, only for Mustapha Ali to do a rolling neck breaker through the ropes to bring them all down like dominoes. That was a really lovely bit. We see multiple occasions where Morrison or Ali goes for the pin and Retribution stick their oar in to stop it going down. Slapjack stopping Morrison from getting the win over Ali. And after Ricochet hits a gorgeous springboard 450, we see Retribution get involved once again to stop that pin going down. Ricky's had enough at this point. Does a dive onto T-Bar and Mace, who catch him and hit him with high justice, that double powerbomb thing they do, into the turnbuckle post. As Ali is watching on with glee, he gets rolled up by John Morrison for the 1-2-3. John Morrison is in the US title match later on in the show. This is going to be an interesting one. I give it a C+. I thought it wasn't a terrible match. Felt quite disjointed at points, felt a little bit messy in parts as well. We have the ongoing saga of Retribution, who have the energy of Nexus, but the momentum of Job Squad. And also, here's the thing, and we'll get to it properly later in the night, but Asuka's taken out of this card. There's no Asuka match tonight. She's meant to be facing Lacey Evans, but Lacey has announced that she is Pregnant. So, you fill a spot in a triple threat match, and for storyline reasons, we need to fill it. But could you not have done something with Asuka tonight as well? You know? So we open the show proper with the Smackdown Elimination Chamber match, and it is Cesaro and Daniel Bryan starting us white hot. These guys have had some belters on SmackDown, and they keep that energy going right here. Amazing back and forth with these. We see Bryan go for a super power bomb. We see Bryan counter, rather, a super power bomb with a Frankensteiner onto Cesaro. One of the high spots on this early altercation between these two. Baron Corbin is the next one in. He batters Daniel Bryan and Cesaro for a good long time. He focuses a lot of the attack on Daniel Bryan's knee as well, driving him to knee first into the pod and the buckle at one point, which looked pretty nasty. We see Sami Zayn come out next. Sami doesn't want to leave his pod. He's had a tough night, Sami Zayn. His camera crew were ejected from the ringside area at the beginning of this one, and now he doesn't want to get in there and fight Baron Corbin, so he keeps his pod door closed. Bryan hits Corbin in the back with some brutal knees into the top of his back, and as Sami Zayn is chuckling at this, Cesaro opens the pod door on the other side and brings Sami out in a very aggressive manner. Cesaro bouncing Sami Zayn here, there, and everywhere for a good while. We see Corbin superplexing Bryan just as Sami lands a tornado DDT to get Sami back into this match as well. We see Sami try and get some distance from Cesaro. He climbs up the pod and then starts climbing along the chaining to try and escape him. But Cesaro's giving chase up the pod, along the chamber. He grabs the top of the chamber and manages to boot Sami Zayn to the floor. And then Cesaro, just showing off, starts doing some pull-ups on top of the chamber. If there was a real crowd here, it would have lit up for Cesaro at this point. If they hadn't done so already, like, Cesaro would have got that Kofi Mania-esque rub here if there was a real crowd. But it's not. So that's not happening. Corbin takes over again. We see him flattening Cesaro and Bryan until Cesaro manages to land a diving uppercut at Baron Corbin, hits him with the swing and puts him in the sharpshooter to take out Corbin via tap out. Corbin is done in this one. Owens is out next, and he gets approached by Sami Zayn, who wants to form an alliance like the good old days. Owens seems up for it until he starts battering Sami Zayn off of the pods. Owens hits hits stunners aplenty, some variations on neck breakers on folk, but when Jey Uso's pod opens, Owens just drops what he's doing. He is laser focused on Jey Uso, and these two immediately start tearing strips off of one another. We see everyone start scrapping outside, and Owens climbs up the pod and lands a gorgeous moonsault off the pod. It looked mwah, chef's kisses all rounds. He hits a stunner on Zayn and a frog splash to send him packing from the match. They open the chamber door to let Sami Zayn out. And as Owens is kind of sort of leaning next to the door, we see Jey Uso take advantage of this and slam Owens' arm into the door. So Owens has got his arm caught in the door, so he can't move his arm. He's trapped, and Jey Uso is just wailing on him with super kicks and super kicks and super kicks. Eventually, Owens gets his arm free, only to get another super kick and a big Uso splash off the top, and Kevin Owens is done in this match. We're down to Jey Uso, Daniel Bryan, and Cesaro. Cesaro pushing back with a swing into the cell and a fall-away power slam onto Daniel Bryan. Cesaro and Bryan have another brilliant showdown here. They go back and forth with Cesaro countering the big running knee kick with an avalanche gut buster in there as well. Oh, that looks amazing off the top rope. We see a half crab swing with Cesaro working on that injured leg of Bryan, swinging around on the injured leg. However, as he's doing that, and it looks like he's getting ready to put Daniel Bryan away, here's Jey Uso with a super kick and a big Uso splash. 1, 2, 3. Cesaro's gone. Like, the guy who I think everybody picked to win this whole thing is out of there. We're down to Daniel Bryan and Jey Uso. And Uso goes to get the pin onto Daniel Bryan. Bryan kicks out following an Uso splash. A back and forth between these two. Sees Jey going for the Uso splash off the top of the pod. Bryan gets his knees up, follows up with a running knee for a winning 3. And Daniel Bryan has survived the Elimination Chamber match. Giving the match an A, it was a solid, well-worked Elimination Chamber from beginning to end. There never felt like a cold moment in this. It was red hot all the way through. The thing that stops me giving it an A+, this should have been Cesaro's night. There was no reason not to give this to Cesaro here. But Bryan winning is still a good outcome, but it says something, doesn't it, when Daniel Bryan winning this Elimination Chamber causes the temperature to drop. It says something how different things are right now in the wrestling world. So Daniel Bryan survives that particular match to the shock of nobody. Here comes the big dog, Roman Reigns. He's having his Universal Championship match right now against a knackered Daniel Bryan, and he immediately goes for the spear off the bell. Bryan catches him off guard in the yes lock, and we have a little moment where we're like, whoa, is Bryan going to do it? But Roman manages to muscle out of it and just batters him with heavy strikes, puts him in that front face lock, and this is done. Daniel Bryan passes out in that front face lock, and Roman Reigns retains his championship. He doesn't have long to celebrate, though, because all of a sudden, boof, out of nowhere, there's Edge. Big spear to Roman Reigns, and he does it. He points at the sign, the fireworks go off. It is going to be Edge versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. The Universal title match, I'm giving a B+2. There was not much to grade here. It was an exciting moment, an exciting spell between these two. Nothing that was done wrong at all. It was well played, and Edge coming out at the end made sense. Here's the thing. This could have been Cesaro. It should have been Cesaro. If it was going to be as inconsequential as it was, you could have put Cesaro in that position. Just, why not? Why not, eh? Why not? Does it make the Smackdown Elimination Chamber match somewhat redundant? A little bit. But does it sort of add to Roman Reigns being a horrible bar steward? Yes, it does. Is it a unique way of us getting to Edge versus Roman? Yes, it is. But you could have put Cesaro here. Nobody would have died. The Miz and Bad Bunny get into it backstage. Bunny slaps the taste out of Miz's mouth. Miz looks like he's going to hit him, but then there's Damian Priest appearing instead, and Miz backs away. I'm sure that's all the Miz will do tonight. I'm sure that's the end of things. The US Championship on the line. It is Riddle and John Morrison challenging Lashley in a triple threat match. And Lashley is dominant throughout this one. He's got MVP in his corner on crutches shouting orders. MVP suffered an injury on Raw, hence the crutch tonight. But Lashley is just battering both Riddle and Morrison. Riddle gets a Rana to take Lashley outside the ring after a while, and Morrison goes to attack Riddle, and Riddle low bridges him, and Morrison sort of adjusts the maneuver and does a twisting dive to Lashley outside the ring. We then get Morrison and Riddle going back and forth for a little bit, and there's some nice chemistry. They give us a little tease, some nice chemistry there. But then Lashley is back in this one, just cleaning house, doing damage throughout it. We see Jomo and Riddle following their altercation. Lashley get back in there. We see Riddle get a final flash out of nowhere onto Lashley and hit a floating bro, but it's only a 2. Morrison follows up with a Starship Pain, only gets a 2. MVP starts jaw-jacking at Morrison, to which Morrison slides out of the ring and grabs the crutch from MVP. It's no DQ and a triple threat. Morrison goes to swing at Lashley. Lashley instead locks him in the hurt lock. He drops the crutch in the process, and with Morrison in the hurt lock, Riddle picks up the crutch, smashes it over the back of Lashley's head, knocks him bandy. This leaves Morrison wide open for the Bro Derek and the 1, 2, 3. And Riddle is your new United States champion. B plus for this one, a decent match. Bobby looked unstoppable here. Even after the pin went down, he's back to his senses pretty quick, and he looks like a cross man. There's plenty of story to tell here, I'm sure. But yeah, very good match between these guys. Not enough to give it an A, in my opinion, but there was lots to be had from this. And the right decision as well. Riddle's lost so many times to Lashley. I think he had to get that win here, otherwise he was never going to get it. The WWE Women's Tag Titles on the line next. It's Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler defending against Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. Reginald shoots his shot with Sasha before the match, which is adorable. Bless his little heart. Belair and Banks on a roll to start with. They manage to double team Nia Jax, and they get some good techers in there each with Baszler, but Sasha Banks is the one that gets worn down for most of this one, with Baszler manipulating that arm, stamping on the fingers of Sasha, just wearing her down throughout most of this. After a long time getting twisted up, Banks able to break away and tag Belair, but Belair almost immediately gets the clutch nearly on her until Banks makes a blind tag to get back into this one, start to turn the tide on it once again. Belair surviving in this match thanks to Sasha Banks, who's already tired from this one. Banks is able to get back into this with a frog splash and a near fall. Belair gets a tag and hits a KOD. Nia Jax breaks the cover on this one, though. The match breaks down after this with Nia Jax getting a near fall, kicking out of a Meteora from Sasha Banks near the end of this one. At this point, Reginald comes out with a little bit of the bubbly, and he wants to offer Sasha Banks a drink mid-match. He's a trier, isn't he? Sasha Banks is like, what are we doing? We've got to fight here. Sasha gets the Banks statement in on Shayna Baszler, and Reginald sort of stood there with the drink. He at one point, with the referee talking to Shayna Baszler, we see Reginald pass the champagne bottle to Sasha to suggest maybe using it as a weapon. The referee sees this as a word with Sasha Banks, and this leads to Nia Jax getting the Samoa drop on to Sasha Banks, and one Samoan drop does it for Banks. 1, 2, 3. Jax and Baszler retain the women's tag team titles. As the champs head off up the ramp, we see Banks and Belair in the ring shouting at a very sad Reginald. Giving it a B- here. It was good. It was good back and forth. Very predictable outcome. Some clumsiness in there, but it was what it was. I don't think we needed this match. I don't think it really helps tell any stories at all, unless we were going to see Belair and Banks fall out because we're heading towards that match at WrestleMania. Maybe that's the story we could have told here, but we didn't. We've got to focus on Reginald. Anyone would think it was going to be Sasha Banks versus Reginald at Mania. MVP and Miz are chatting backstage. A harbinger of doom, if I ever did see one. And with that, it is the main event. No title defense for Asuka tonight. I feel like that's a waste of energy. I feel like are you telling me that there's nobody that you could have put against Asuka tonight? You couldn't have had somebody, in the predictions, Pablo said Peyton Royce. You could have done that. You could have had that match, but they just took the whole thing away, which seems really, really odd and a bit of a waste of energy. You know, you could have done something there. You can't just ask us one of the best wrestlers on the planet. Anyway, whatever. Universal title match was the opener, so we're ending on the WWE Championship Elimination Chamber match. And it is Jeff Hardy and Randall Keith starting this one. It's a slower affair than the opening chamber match. It really is. They go back and forth for ages. Iron Drew comes in next to pick up the pace a little bit. Drew dominant. He lawn darts Jeff into a pod, at which point he looks straight down the lens of the camera and says, "I told you to move," which was a funny little bit. Kofi is out third. Not a whole lot has happened in this match so far. It's not been terrible. It's been decent enough, but I think I'm drawing a lot of comparisons to the Smackdown one, which felt like it was constant action. This feels like a much slower, more methodical pace. Kofi's out third. We see him get into a back and forth with Orton that leads to a sudden roll-up. 1, 2, 3. Orton's done. Orton's out of the match. He RKOs Kofi and Jeff out of sheer anger before making his exit from the chamber. And that's his night done. No shenanigans from The Fiend or Alexa Bliss. None of that. He's just done. That's his night. Right. Okay. Fine. As the chamber is open to let Randy Orton out, AJ Styles at this point decides, this is my moment. So AJ Styles gets Omos to take the plexiglass off of the back of his chamber, and he runs around the chamber and jumps in. He's not going to wait because he sees both Jeff and Kofi out with an RKO. He runs in to get the pin. Doesn't get the pin on either. AJ's entering this match a little bit earlier than expected. We see Adam Pearce ejecting Omos at this point as well. AJ gets distracted as Omos is getting kicked out. He eats a tornado DDT from Jeff Hardy. Sheamus is the final entrant in this one, and he is like a machine just focused on Drew McIntyre. They immediately start battering each other in the ring. We see Jeff and Kofi try and get into the mix. They get individually knocked away, and they carry on decking one another for a good long while. We see Drew go to superplex Sheamus, and this leads to a Tower of Doom from AJ and Jeff with Kofi, following up all that with a big old trust fall onto everyone else. From this point on, the match is really starting to pick up. Sheamus catches Kofi off of a trust fall with a brogue kick, which looked amazing. 1, 2, 3, and Kofi is done. Sheamus looks unstoppable at the moment. Soon after this, though, we see Jeff land twists of fate on everyone and a whisper in the wind on Drew and Sheamus. Back in the ring is a swanton bomb onto AJ, and Drew out of nowhere bursts in with a claymore to Jeff. Jeff is eliminated by Drew McIntyre. We see Sheamus and Drew going at it once again until Sheamus hits white noise. AJ lands 2 450 springboards onto Drew, only gets a near fall from them. Sheamus continues to work over on AJ until Drew jumps in, lands a future shock onto Sheamus. He goes for the claymore, eats a brogue kick instead, and that's where we think this is it. Drew's going out, but no. Here is AJ Styles with a phenomenal forearm out of nowhere. Pins Sheamus. The guy we thought would be at the end, many thought would win the title tonight, is out of there. And it's down to AJ and Drew. And AJ goes up for one more phenomenal forearm. Springboards into the air and boff. Claymore catches him in midair from Drew. 1, 2, 3. Drew McIntyre retains the WWE Championship in a match that started slow but really went into high gear the moment that everybody was in that chamber. They really started to light it up. We see the chamber going up. Drew standing tall. All of a sudden, boom! As if tonight hasn't been enough, spears out of nowhere. Here's another one. Bobby Lashley this time, spearing Drew McIntyre to the ground. And Bobby Lashley obliterates Drew McIntyre. Beats him up outside the ring, around the ring, gets him back into the ring, just destroys him, leaves him just crumbled on the floor. Then we hear, awesome! And here comes The Miz, Money in the Bank briefcase in hand. Can't get a pin off a DDT onto Drew. Drew powers out, but a skull-crushing finale does it. 1, 2, 3, and The Miz is your WWE Champion. He's cashed in the briefcase, and he's won the whole darn thing, hasn't he? The last shot we see is of The Miz holding the WWE Championship. What? Giving this one an A-, actually. As I say, started slow, built to the end. I thought the the Smackdown Chamber match was superior in terms of in-ring quality, but only by, when you compare it across, I think this was still really, really good once it properly got going. And as for that title change at the end, like this is going to be something that people have talked about this loads over the last several hours since it went down. Loads of people really angry with this decision. Loads of people saying they don't like The Miz as champion. Well, good. We're not supposed to like The Miz as champion. I don't think he's holding it all the way to WrestleMania. Ross made a really cool point during predictions, which is Fastlane is going to be the first WWE pay-per-view on Peacock, on the new network thing. So why not punctuate that arrival on Peacock with Drew becoming WWE Champion again? That's what they could do. They could do it, That might be why they've done it. But I thought it was a strong main event, personally. I know that people will say that, is this the right way to end the show? Hey, they're in the business of getting you to watch on Monday night. I'm certainly intrigued as to, is Lashley going to get a title shot tomorrow night and just cream Miz? Is Morrison is there something going on there? Is Drew just going to scorch the earth? We'll find out tomorrow night. And overall, I'm giving Elimination Chamber a B+. The Chamber matches on the whole were solid this year. They all worked really, really well. The twists and turns throughout I thought were great. I love to have seen Cesaro in the Smackdown one. That's my one big complaint. It sucks that we couldn't get a match for Asuka. That seems to have let the show down a little bit as far as I'm concerned. Nobody available, really. Nobody. The women's tag match was good. Felt a bit redundant, though. Keeps us guessing on the road to WrestleMania. But you know what? It was a decent enough show that was bookended by two solid Elimination Chamber matches. The road to WrestleMania is well and truly underway. I'll be back in 2 weeks on Cultaholic. You have got substitute teachers for Graded for the next 2 weeks. You'll be glad to hear. I'll be back in a fortnight. So until then, stay safe. And remember, Pablo is your Cultaholic Heavyweight Champion. He'd be here to say thank you, but he's currently fast asleep in the other room. It's tough being the champ. Stay safe. Love you. Bye.